When it comes to logo design, there are a few things that you can do in order to elevate your design from a simple one like this to one that looks a little bit more like this. Hello my friends, Rob here from Button Press Graphics, and today I'm going to be showing you how to elevate your simple logo designs into something that looks far better. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, as you can see on screen, this logo is just a quick mock-up logo that I did. It literally took me around 15 minutes to do, and I just wanted to use it as an example for what you can do within Inkscape to make your basic designs look a whole lot better. Now, full disclosure, I am going to be using quite a few different methods within this video, so this is going to be slightly more advanced than normal, but if you want to follow along, you can do so, and I will go as slowly as I possibly can, enabling you to follow along step by step. So first things first, let's go up to File, Document Properties, and that way we can set up our file so we are all working with exactly the same canvas. If you would like to follow along, the details are on screen right now. Just copy those down, and when you are finished, you can close out of it. Now, for the logo that I did that you saw in the intro, I'm just going to run through exactly how I created it. It is nothing special. I wanted to keep it as basic as I possibly could, so it is easier to follow along. It's only the methods that I'm going to be using that might be slightly more advanced. So to begin with, we are going to create some rectangles. So for this, we need to come to the left toolbar and select the rectangles tool. Now what we're looking for is just to create a nice thin rectangle around that size. Now we don't want the curved corners to begin with, so I'm just going to come up to the top properties toolbar and I'm going to press this button here where it says make corners sharp. Now if I zoom in, as you can see, they are all a perfect point. Now by using our select tool, we can grab and we can shift this around. So what we're going to do is we're going to need 3 different rectangles, all of equal size like this one. So in order to do this, I'm going to right click and duplicate, and then I'm going to hold Control while I scroll down, and while still holding Control, I'm going to press the space bar once and then come down a little bit further and let go. Now we have 3 rectangles on screen. We're going to need to line them up so they are equal distances apart from each other. This is very simple using the fantastic Align and Distribute menu. If you haven't got the Align and Distribute menu open, you can find it on the top toolbar right here. Click that and it will open this menu here. Now with last selected from the drop down, we are going to use the select tool and holding shift to select all 3 of the rectangles. With them all selected, we are going to come to the distribute section and we are going to select this one here, even vertical gaps. That is going to distribute all of these rectangles equally so the distance from each is exactly the same. With that done, we can select the canvas to select off everything, and then we're going to select the middle rectangle on its own. We're going to right click that and go to duplicate, and then we are going to hold shift and come to these arrows on either side, and as we scale, as you will see, it will match on both sides. Now once we have a rectangle which is longer than all the rest, we can then click it again to get the rotation handles, and this time I'm going to hold Control while I rotate one of the corners until we get something that looks a little like that. Now as you might have seen, as I was rotating, I was going in increments of 15 degrees. In order to do that, you just need to hold Control. If you do not hold Control, it will go like this. So make sure that you have got the Control button held down while you move. Now what I want to do is I want to slide this one over because I want the bottom section here to be closer to the end. So to do this, I'm going to click on it again to get the resize handles back up, and then I'm going to hold Control again and slide it along ever so slightly, just like that. Now the reason you can see these shapes through this shape over the top is because I have got the opacity turned down. If you would like to have the opacity turned down on yours too, you are going to need to open your fill and stroke menu, which is located right here. Click that and it will open it up on the right hand side. Then you can go down to the bottom and just select the opacity that you want. Anywhere which is between around 40 to 60 or thereabouts is absolutely fine. As long as you can make out the shapes that are underneath, you will be absolutely fine. Now in order to get the gap that we're looking for as well, we are going to need to repeat the same process we have just done with the same shape, but this time we are going to duplicate it. So we're going to right click, select duplicate, and then we are going to hold Control, and this time we are just going to slide it back over in the opposite direction, but very slightly. Around there would be perfect. Now we have got our basic shape for the logo. So if we click and drag over everything to select everything, we can then go to our shape builder tool. Now within the shape builder, as you highlight, you will get a blue shape that will appear. What we are wanting is to get rid of these bits at the top, get rid of one little section here, and make sure that everything else is connected that we want to be connected. So in order to do this, we can click, and if we drag into the next shape, it will join them together like so. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to click and drag over everything that I want to keep. And for these bits, I am just going to select them once. And now, as you can see, we have our basic logo. When you are finished, go to the green tick up in the top left corner, select that, and we now have the shapes that we want. Now with all them still selected, we are going to go to Path, and we're going to union them together. We can break them apart at a later point if you want to individually color them, but for now we have exactly what we need. So I'm just going to slightly move that up to keep it out of the way. Next we are going to do the text. So we're going to come to the left toolbar and we're going to select our text tool. With the text tool selected, we can select anywhere on the canvas. So we get the little cursor that flashes up here, enabling us to start typing. For this, I am just going to go with what I went with for the example in this video, and that is the word esports, just like so. Now with the text that we have, we can actually edit the text in any way we want. So in order to do this, we are going to need our text tool open. If we come up to the top toolbar, we can select this letter T, which says open text, and that will bring our text menu open here. You can search for whichever font you want by scrolling, or you can go to the search box here, and if you simply type in what you want, the search results will appear here, and then you can add them. For this, I'm going to use Apex. Apex is a good font for an esports type logo, so I'm going to use that. If you are wanting to use the same font that I am using, I will leave a link to it in the description down below. Once you are happy, go to the bottom right corner and select apply. Now with this selected, we can then use our select tool to resize it to whichever shape we want. Now I want it to be a little bit longer and stretched out rather than like this. because I think it looks better, and you can see these little jagged corners on the top a lot, and I think that helps the text. Now we are going to line these up so they look more cohesive together. So I'm going to select the logo. I want to reduce the size of this just a little so it's not too big above the text. And then I am going to come to our Align and Distribute menu again. And where it says last selected, we are going to select Page from the drop down. And then we are going to center on the vertical axis. With that done, we are going to drag that down so it's more central. And then we are going to do the same with the text. We're going to select it. With Page selected from the drop down, we're going to center it up. Now if I hold Control while I scroll up, we can get something that looks a little bit like that. And there you go. You simply have your very basic logo. But what if you want to make this a whole lot better? Well, there are ways around it to make this look a lot more professional, and I'm about to show you. Step 1, let's create a border around the both of them. Now, in order to do this would be very, very simple. All you have to do is hold Shift and select both of them. Now that they're both selected, you can right click, duplicate, and then we're going to go to Path, Union. So now we have our complete shape with the logo and the text. But if I was to click and move it out of the way, as you can see, the others still remain there underneath. Now the reason I have done this is simply so I can use the dynamic offset and create a much more uniform curved border around the outside. However, that might make an issue for you, which I'm about to show you. If you come to Path, select your dynamic offset, and then you use your nodes tool on the left toolbar, you will get the little diamond which allows you to control the size of the offset. So if I click and I drag, as you can see, it creates a border around all of your shapes, or all of the shapes you have selected. However, what if you do not want the dip here, for example, where this hyphen is? If you want it to be a complete block around the outside of the text, then dynamic offset is not a step you should be using right now. Instead, you should be using a box with curved corners. So let me undo all this and I will show you what I mean. Now we are back to the point where we have our logo and we have the text. We are going to need to create a curved box around the text. So we come to our rectangles tool and we simply create a box that overlaps everything else. And now you see why having the opacity down is such a help. Once you've selected the box, you will have 3 nodes, 2 square nodes on either corner, and then the circle node here. We're going to click and drag the circle node to curve the corners. I don't want them to be too curved, but just enough that they are noticeable. With that done, we are going to go to Path, Object to Path. And now that is locked in place. Next, we want to make sure that the box is aligned with everything else. Now, because we have the rectangle above the text, it is only going to select the rectangle. But by holding the Alt key, we can now select the text underneath. Holding Shift, we can then select the box around it as well. Now we're going to come back to our Align and Distribute menu, go back to last selected, and we are going to line it up on the vertical and the horizontal axes. And as you can see, now it sits perfectly. However, you don't have to have this rectangle above everything else. It might actually help you if you don't. So we are going to select off the canvas to deselect everything, And then we are going to select the rectangle again. And we are going to come up to the top toolbar to this little button here that says lower to the bottom. This is going to lower it to the very bottom so everything else sits on top. And now if I try and select the text, as you can see, the text is selected. Now what we want to do, instead of grouping everything together and then using the dynamic offset, instead we are going to select the logo on its own, right click, duplicate, and now we are going to use the dynamic offset on the logo itself. Again, using the node tool, we can now increase the size. Once you are happy, go to Path, Object to Path, and then you will be left with something that looks like this. Now what you might notice if we zoom right in, because you use the offset, you might get areas like this. Now I happen to think that that looks pretty good, but if you don't want them like this, for example, where it dips in and comes back out, you can just select them all and hit delete. Because we have a straight line coming in from the right and a straight line coming in from the left, deleting their nodes will just get rid of them and allow these nodes to be connected straight away. Once you are happy with the way it looks, grab the rectangle and holding Shift, grab the offset that you just created, and with them both selected, go to Path, Union. So that is how you create a border. But what if you want it to look a little bit more dynamic? Well, you can do so by using a path effect that I already went over in a previous video. By clicking and dragging over everything, you will see there are multiple shapes, and what we need is a group of shapes. So with them all selected, we are going to come up to the top here and select Group. Now they are all one group of shapes, we can open our Path Effects menu. Now if you haven't got your Path Effect menu open, go to Path, scroll right the way down to where it says Path Effects ... Select that, and as you will see, the group that you have will be displayed here. For me it is G55. I'm going to then select this arrow, and this will bring up our Path Effects menu. For this one, I'm going to use the perspective envelope. Now with the perspective envelope menu open, I want to mirror in vertical. So what I'm going to do is check this little box here that says mirror the movements in vertical, and then I'm going to come over to our nodes tool on the left hand side, and as you will see, you now have 4 nodes on each corner. But because we have mirror movements in vertical, whenever we click and we drag this, it will mirror all the movements on the left hand side as well. Now this has brought another problem that you might face into question. Can you notice something that's not happening? The text itself is not moving. Well, there is a reason for this, and that is because it is text. It is not an object. Not yet. So if we undo this, we cancel out of that path effect. We need to use our select tool, select the group of objects, ungroup them, and then when we come to the text, as you can see in the bottom, it says text. This is not what we want. We want this text to be an object. So we come to Path, Object Path, and now when we select everything and group it together and use our path effect, you will see they all move together. Now I've done that because when I first started out in Inkscape, I wanted to show you some of the issues that I had, and I had nobody when I researched it explaining to me what it looked like when you got it wrong. Well, now you know. Now for this, I don't want to have it too stretched like this, and I don't want it to be too squashed like this. I just want to bring in these a little bit, and then I'm going to go up and down until I get the logo in a place that I think looks pretty good. Now, for me, about there looks perfect. Now with this done, we are simply going to finalize it by going to Path, Object to Path. Now the path effect is complete. But this is still a group of objects, so with it still selected, you can ungroup them. And what that has done is ungrouped all the shapes that you previously had, but all of them have had the path effect applied to them at the same time. Which means that if you did it individually, they wouldn't be aligned properly, and you might have to do it by eye, and then it wouldn't look quite right. With this method here, everything will be aligned. Now that we have all of this complete, we want to cast a shadow from it. Now in order to do this, it is very, very simple. If we select off everything to deselect everything, then we can simply select the outside shape, so the background or the border, whatever you would like to call it, and we are going to right click it and duplicate. Now with it duplicated, we are going to hold Shift and Control, and we are going to scale it down, but only very slightly. Now with that done, we are going to select this bottom arrow here, and we're just going to click and drag that down. And the area I'm paying particular notice to is these corners here and the angle that these have. The same can be said for these angles here and these. That is important for the next step. Now I'm pretty happy with where that is now. So with it there, I'm going to drop that to the bottom. And now we are going to join these up. So for this, we are going to need our pen tool. So we're going to come to the pen tool, and then we are going to enable snapping. With snapping enabled, as you can see, it will now snap onto the corners and even the curves around the outside of the corners. Now, if you zoom in, you might find that you can get much more precise controls like this. And what we are going to do is we're going to try and find the most outward point of this curve. So around there is about right. And then we're going to do the same on this one. Now if I came here, as you can see, the line is crossing this piece here, and we want to try and get it as far to the outside as we possibly can. And now with that line, we are going to select around like this. Now it's worth mentioning that if you have a stroke on any of your pieces, this is going to affect where you snap onto. As you can see, if I zoom right in, where it's snapping to is not the out edge here. It is simply here. And that is because this is the outer edge. This is the stroke. If that is not what you're after, then you can turn the stroke off. Using the select tool, if you click and drag over everything, I am personally going to hold Shift and deselect that little piece that I've just made. But for everything else, I am going to hold Shift and press this little red X in the bottom left corner And did you see? It all shrank in size. And now when I go right in and I use my pen tool, as you can see, it is now snapping onto the outer edge. So if you prefer to work without the stroke, it might be a lot easier. Now, as you can see, I am going to do this method here, and I'm going to repeat it on this corner, this one, and this one. And now, just like that, we are done. Now, last week I showed you a method of using the Alt key in order to draw a red line like this to select different things. Well, there is a different way. If you select one of the shapes that you have just created, you can go to Edit, select Same, and then select the stroke color. Because we turned off the stroke for everything other than these shapes, we are now able to select all 5 of them without a problem. But with them all selected, we can now hold Shift, select the bottom shape that we lowered to the bottom earlier, and then go to Path, Union. And now we have a complete shape, just like this. Now, at this point, you are well within your rights. If you wanted to, you could keep this selected, then select this piece here. So with them both selected, you could then go to Path and union them together. So they are now all one piece, and if I zoom out, it looks like it's popping off the page. However, if you want to have a definition between the background where it's coming out and the top shape underneath the text and the logo, you are going to need to leave these two separate, because otherwise it's just going to be a lot more difficult for you later on down the line. Now is time to add some color, so we can differentiate between all the different pieces a lot simpler, and that's going to help us with the last stage, which is polish. So I'm going to select the logo, and like I said earlier, we can come to Path and we can break apart, and that will single every shape out into its own individual shape. Now for the number 7, I'm going to change it to, say, yellow. And then for these 3 pieces here, I'm just going to change them to red. And the esports, blue. Why not? You can change the colours to whatever you want, because at the end of the day, it's your design. Now I'm going to show you how you can create a very simple horizon effect over your text. And again, this is just by using the path effects and the dynamic offset. It really is not difficult at all. All you have to use is the ellipsis tool, which you can find on the left toolbar, and then you are going to click and drag a circle that looks a little bit like this. Now again, I'm going to change the color so it's easier for you to see, and then using the select tool, I'm going to turn the snapping off so it doesn't get in the way, and I'm just going to move it up and resize it until I get a shape that I'm happy with and a position that I am happy with. And the edge of the circle that you can see coming across the text is the part that I am paying particular attention to, because that is where the horizon will be within the text. So now, because I'm happy with where it is positioned, I'm going to select the text. We're going to right click and duplicate. And as you can see, now it's layered a copy of the text on top of the circle. With it selected, we are going to hold Shift and select the circle, and then we're going to go to Path, Intersection. And as you can see, it has now created the horizon shape. However, it just looks like a two-tone at the moment. And in order to remedy that, all you have to do is again, go to Path, Dynamic Offset, and then use your node tool to shrink it down slightly, like so. When you're happy with the shape, go to Path, Object to Path. See, as I said, very, very simple. Now, in order to get the gradient within that shape, you just use a gradient like you would in any other shape. By going to your Fill and Stroke menu, going to your Fill tab and selecting a linear gradient, you will get your gradient bar here. Now, if I go to my Select tool, gets rid of all the nodes so you can see a lot clearer. Here's your start node. What we want to do is bring that to the middle, and then select the end node, and holding Control, we want to bring that so it's going vertically down. And now, as you can see, it gives a very cool effect. So now that we have the text sorted in the way that we would like, we can then alter the color in any way we would like to. Now for this one, I'm going to go for a light blue because I want the color to just be a lighter version of the text underneath. And again, a light blue. And now when I deselect everything, as you can see, it looks a lot better. Now, even though these background shapes are both black and of course they are separate, if we was to select everything and turn the opacity all the way up, you cannot see the difference between the two. But it also looks very, very dark and very, very black. In order to remedy this, you can put a background behind the text, which is just going to highlight very, very simply. And here is another thing that used to catch me out a lot when I first started on my digital art journey, and that would be how to cut away blur effects. Here is an example of exactly what I mean. Say this green square is your canvas and you want this blur to only appear in the top right corner of your canvas. But as soon as you blur this circle, as you can see even by the bounding box, it is massive. And if I increase the blur, it gets only a lot bigger. Now if you try to use another square or something like that, for example, if I was to duplicate this green box and then select both the green box and the circle together and say intersection by going to Path, Intersection, now it loses all its definition until I bring it down. And as you will find, even when you get the right definition, you still see the green by the side here. This is a problem. Well, I will show you the way to get around it. With this selected, we are going to create another green box by right-clicking and duplicating. And then we're going to select both by holding Shift and selecting the blur as well. But this time we are going to right click and go to Set Clip. Now what this has done, it has created a clipped version of the blur, and you can now maneuver this in any way you want. So this is the method that we are going to use when it comes to our logo. In order to do this, we are going to create a simple box across the text. And when we have something that looks a little bit like this, with the box selected, we are going to go to our linear gradient within the fill and stroke menu. Now within the fill and stroke menu, as you can see, we have one solid color here and we have one that is transparent. And on this bar at the top, this shows you where the gradient starts and ends. So we're going to get the one that is completely solid on the left hand side and we're going to drag that into the middle. And then we are going to double click near where we have just dragged it from and move that all the way to the end. Now with this one selected, which is this top one, we are going to go to the alpha channel and turn the opacity all the way down on that as well. Now we have a glow in the center, but not on either end. And we want this to be horizontal, not vertical. So again, we're going to grab the start point and bring it up. Grab the end point and bring that down while holding the control button. And now, as you can see, we have that yellow glow going around. And of course, you can change the color to whatever you would like. Now I'm going to use a very light white, a light blue, should I say. But you can still see the yellow, and I don't want that. So we are going to change this one and this one so it looks a lot more unified. And that is the color setting done. Now all we need to do is select the outside shape, the black shape at the bottom, and we are going to right click it and duplicate. And then with that duplicated, we are going to hold shift, select the gradient we just created, and of course, you know, go to set clip. And now we have our clipped shape, and if I was to bring it down, as you can see, it is perfectly clipped on either end. Now with that done, we can then lower this selection so it appears underneath the text. This time we are going to go up to this little section of icons here, but this time we are not going to use the lower to bottom. We are going to use lower, where it says lower selection by one step. And we will keep pressing that until it drops underneath the text. Now, as you can see, there is no definition of these letters or anything else. So what we're going to do is we are simply going to select the text and we are going to add a stroke. By coming down to the bottom left swatches, we can hold shift, press the black, and now we have a much better defined shade. Also, if I was to get this shape here, this, if you remember, is the bottom shape where the black is pulling away from the logo. We can add a stroke onto this as well. And again, as you can see, it is now creating that bump. So we will need to do the same on all the shapes. With that selected, we can hold shift and press the black button at the bottom left corner. And there you go. Everything lines up perfectly again. And now for the logo itself, You might think that you may not need the stroke, and if you don't want the stroke and you think it looks better without, then don't add one. But because this gradient bleeds up into this section here, you might find that holding shift and then putting on the stroke anyway might help to line everything up and to make that definition more visible. And now the final touch, just to make this text pop a little bit more. There is a simple method you can use to add a shine on your text or any object that you want to add a reflection to. So what I'm going to do is go to my stars and polygons tool, select it, and then up in the top properties toolbar where it says polygons or stars, make sure you have star selected. I'm going to select around 8 points or 8 corners, and then we're going to click and drag until we get something that looks a little bit like this. Now I don't want the stroke for this design, so for this one I'm going to hold shift and click the red X to get rid of the stroke, and I'm going to turn this to white. Now I think around 2 should be fine, so I'm going to right click and duplicate this, and then I'm going to place them over the parts of the text that I want to add a little glint to. In order to do this, I'm going to use the snapping tool again, so I can snap onto some sharp corners. Now the 2 sharpest corners I can see just happen to be on the S. So I'm going to snap like this, and then with the other one onto that one. And on one of these I'm going to select and just turn it ever so slightly so it doesn't look exactly the same. And I am also going to reduce the size significantly so it looks more like this and this. And then we can select them both by holding shift while we do. And I'm going to turn the blur up so I can keep the shape, but at the same time make sure that it is blurred enough to give that soft light. Once I've got the right blur, I can then lower the opacity until it reaches something that I'm happy with, that just looks like a very small glint. Now there is one more thing that we can do to elevate this even one step further, and that would be to select the background and create a shadow. So in order to do this, we are going to go to the back shape again, and of course hold Alt in order to select the shape underneath. Then we are going to hold shift and select this bottom shape here, and with them both selected we are going to right click and duplicate, and then with both of them shapes we are going to go to Path, Union. Now we have a completely black shape over the top, perfectly the same shape. Well, if we use the arrow keys, we can do this, and then we can drop it to the bottom, and then come to our blur in our fill and stroke and create a blur of around 10 to 15 and drop the opacity. And there you have it, my friends. That is how you can elevate a simple basic design with a few methods to make it look a whole lot better. If you create something using these methods, I would love to see them. As I said, this is something that you can do very quickly, very simply, and you will see that they are used all over the world. So go and give it a try and let me know what you think. Now before I sign off, my friends, welcome to the Creative Corner. You may remember I did a mandala video not that long ago. That was requested by one of my viewers, and after I completed it, she decided to send me some of her work. And here it is. I was absolutely blown away with the results that she showed me, and I have to say it is some superb work. See, if anyone can do it, you can, so why not give it a go? Try and follow one of my tutorials, create some art and send it in to me, and maybe next time you will get featured. So, thank you so much for all the people that have submitted their work. I will be posting more of them in the future, and if you would like to be featured, then you know what to do. You can find all the information you need in the description down below. Thank you so much, Missa. If this is the first time you're encountering my videos, please consider giving me a subscribe if you want to learn more with the wonders of Inkscape. And of course, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell, and I will see you in the next one.